Let's talk about how to create interactive levels. I'd like to see a lot more narrative adventure games, a lot more walking sims, and that means a lot more levels where you can click on stuff. I think this is the first challenge that most devs are going to encounter. How do I get the player to be able to click? How can I make it so they can open that door or talk to that person? If you try and look up tutorials on it, they're going to teach you a very specific approach, and it might not help you with the rest of the stuff you're trying to do. So what I'd like to do is talk about how to approach this in general. It's much easier than you might think. It's very easy to set all of this stuff up without any code at all. We're going to be using Unreal, though. Unreal has a very powerful tool called the level blueprint, and that's just not around in Unity or Godot. You can still do this in the same way, but it requires a little bit more effort. So, we'll talk about it in Unreal instead, where it doesn't take any effort at all. Here is a demo level I put together in about 2 hours for the previous video. And I put a lady in it. Hello, a lady. So our goal today will be to talk to a lady. But I'm not going to show you the specifics of, this is exactly how we do it here. I want to show you general approaches that you're going to want to be able to understand how to use. And I'm going to start that off with a trigger volume. Every game engine uses trigger volumes. Exactly how you get them depends on the engine, but they are basically a universal term. And the concept is that this yellow box, this orange box, will fire an event whenever an actor or a game object or whatever the term is for things in the game world in your engine, whenever, something goes inside. So in this case, we're going to put this in front of her and size it like this. And that's going to be when the player is in there, we're going to want to react. Now, I strongly recommend naming all of your trigger volumes because it's hard to remember what trigger volume 7 or 8 is. So we're going to call this Talk to a Lady. There we go. So this trigger volume doesn't actually do anything right now. It's technically firing off the event, but nothing's listening. Now, depending on the tutorial you're watching, you may find people who are like, oh, well, you should put this inside of a custom blueprint and then have it react. And there's an easy way instead. You go up to Blueprints and you hit Open Level Blueprints. If you know what blueprints are in Unreal, a level blueprint is just like any other blueprint. Just like an actor blueprint or a component blueprint, it has access to all of the stuff inside of it. In this case, that includes our new reference to Talk to a Lady. But you can see up here it says add event or function for trigger volume 8, but it's not called trigger volume 8. It's called Talk to a Lady. So what's this? Is there another volume in here? I think this is a bug in 5.0.0. It's not properly refreshing the names here. It doesn't actually mean anything is wrong, but it's kind of annoying that happens. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and add an actor begin overlap. That means that you can see how it instantly changes over to being Talk to a Lady rather than trigger volume 8. This will fire whenever any actor enters into this trigger volume. Now for a walking sim, this is very, very easy because there's no bullets or people walking around at random or birds flying into it. And if there are, you might have to do something a little bit more careful so that you only react to the player. But in this situation, the only actor that's moving is the player. So if anything triggers this, we can just do whatever we want to do. So we'll just put in a debug print. Print hello. So if we head on over, on the upper left-hand corner, we'll see hello. See? Hello. Is it me you're looking for? And you can already see the core of how this level blueprint works. We don't have to create a custom blueprint for every single object that we want to respond to the player interaction. We can just put it in a level blueprint. So that is going to be a very powerful tool for us. And there are a lot of things we can do with this. For example, we could open another level. We can pick any level we want. We can go over to the asset showcase. And if we do that, it'll automatically just load up that level. And you can use this if you were, for example, walking through a hall or a door. Just walk on over, and we've got some loading time here. But there's our asset showcase. So this is one of the strongest mental approaches that you're going to want to get in your head when you're building levels. When you put an object into a level, you're not putting a standalone object with its own concept of how it should do things every single time. In many cases, the logic is going to be very level specific, and there's no reason to create a custom object with level specific logic in it. You just put that logic in the level. So for things like sliding blocks or talking to characters, you use the level blueprint. But let's really start to get into this. Let's look at how we can actually pop stuff up on the screen. Now, if you've never used Unreal before, you might be unaware, but there is something called a widget. So we're going to go into here, user interface. We're going to create a new widget blueprint. We're going to call this text pop-up. This is a UI widget, and here's the UI editing screen. And obviously you would spend a lot of time here designing the actual visual you want to use. We are, instead, going to create an ugly visual that doesn't matter because we're just using it for demonstration's sake. But just to show you, we can anchor it to the center of the screen like so, and we can put in center it there, and then we can make it, say, 600 by 200, and maybe we'll make it mostly black, like that. And then we'll put in a text inside here. Boom. And then for that text block, we'll go ahead and make it nice and big and have it say something else. And then since we don't like it coming outside of the block that we've created, we'll turn on the auto wrap text. There we go. Oh, the auto wrap text doesn't like it when the word is longer than... I didn't realize that, but that's fine. We'll just put in some spaces. There we are. There we are. We now have a text box, and we can spend all day adjusting this if we want. There's no particular limitations on how pretty we can make this look. So we'll go ahead and save that. We'll come back over into here, and instead of opening a level, we're going to create that widget. Widget creation is very easy, but it uses nodes that you might not realize exist. So this is one of those things where if you forget this, go back and look it up. You can look it up. Hundreds of videos will talk about it. But first we need to create the widget, which will be here. And from this drop down, we select the text pop-up. We just created it. It's called text pop-up. And then we need to add the widget to the screen. Add to viewport. There it is. That means that when we walk into this, it will create and then add that widget. Now, this is something that can get out of control if you're not careful, because it is a kind of logic that runs without caring whether or not there is already a widget on the screen. So, for example, if I were then to go in again, you can see how it's getting darker. That's because I'm adding a third and a fourth and a fifth. Oh, that's not great, is it? So every time we walk up to her, we add another one of these widgets to the screen. You can create all sorts of code to try and control that if you want, but the easiest way to fix it is to add in the other half of the collision event. Here it is, end overlap. And what we're going to want to do is simply remove it from the viewport. This is one of my pet peeves. It's called add to viewport, but remove from parent. Ugh, how annoying. But this is still very small. It's just a couple of nodes, and it doesn't require us to understand, you know, the widget doesn't know what it's doing, or it doesn't have any custom code in it. It's all in the level. So we walk over here, and then when we talk to her, pops up, back off, goes away. We no longer have it stacking up, see? There are lots of options for how to control this. I'm just showing you that one at the moment. But you know, we don't really want her to say, Instead, we would like her to say something meaningful. So we're going to go back over to this text pop-up. How can we make her say something meaningful? Well, we could enter it in here. We could like type in every single line she says as its own object. That would be miserable, though. What we'll do instead is we'll go over into the graph here. And this is the same kind of blueprint graph we had before, but it's for the text pop-up instead of for the level. We're actually not going to be using it. We're only here because we need to add a variable, which we're going to call text. And obviously, it's going to be a string. Over here, you can see the various settings. We're going to want to hit compile, because you see how it's down here it says, please compile the blueprint. So we can add in a default value. And then up here, we're going to say it's instanced editable. And that just means that we'll be able to, edit it. And we're also going to expose it on spawn. This means that whenever we spawn a text pop-up into the world, we're going to have the option to set this value to anything we want. So if we come back over to here, you can see that if we were to refresh, there it is. Default value, override me. And we can have this say her line, hey buddy, this is my shop. Whatever we want. The only problem is that currently it's not connected to anything. So even though we've set all of that up, in reality, she's still going to say, because even though we're setting that variable up, it's not connected to the text box. Good news, that's super easy. We just go back over here into the text box. We want to go back over into the designer, select that text box. Here it is. You see this bind option? Bind it to text. So now when we walk over to her, no code required. Super simple, right? But what if we want to make it so that we want to be able to click instead? So instead of her just randomly talking to us as we walk up, we would like to be able to see a prompt that allows us to interact with her. This is especially useful for example, a door. You don't always want the player to instantly be whooshed away whenever they get within 10 feet of a door. You just want them to have the option to click, right? Well, first thing you're going to need is you are absolutely, for sure, going to need an input that allows you to click. So if your input mapping is empty, create a new action mapping for whatever click action you want. We've called it action here. You're going to need that in order to let them click in the first place. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to come back over into this level blueprint that we've got. And instead of this, we are going to want this stuff to enable a click. So what does that mean? Well, I already have a widget that just has a little A on it. Just a widget to tell the player they can press a button. It's not called text pop-up, it's called ready. So all I've done, go ahead and refresh this to get rid of that red button here. So all I've done is switched out what we see. So now, when we walk over to her, we're going to see an A prompt instead of a text box. See? But clicking doesn't do anything, right? How do we set this up? Do we have to like create a system where we keep track of exactly what thing is clickable and what thing's not clickable? And that sounds like work. Let's do it the easy way. The easy way is to use a gate. There's lots of other options. I'm just giving you one particular simple example. And so for this gate, what we're going to want is to tie it to an action. There it is. See that? Whenever we click, this will fire and it will hit this gate. So we open the gate when we show the prompt, and then we close the gate when we hide the prompt. And then we create that widget for her text over here. There it is. We'll call it text pop-up. I don't give discounts. But this pop-up isn't being added to the screen. We always have to remember to add it to the viewport. We also have the problem of getting rid of it. Again, we want to be able to make it go away. There's a lot of ways we could get rid of this. I'm going to show you a particular way just so that you know it exists. delay. We will get rid of it after 5 seconds. This is super handy. All of these timeline actions that you can use them. There's some restrictions on exactly where they can go, which you'll learn once you start to try and use them, but it's pretty straightforward and extremely useful. So let's take a peek. See? So there's obviously a lot of things we can do to make this better if we want to make this better. For example, one of the first things we would do is we would tell this to close once we've created the widget. So, you know, we'd probably use another technique that I already taught you in an earlier video, a sequence. Here it is. And we would make this happen here, but first we would want to turn off this toggle. Oh, no, sorry, wrong button. We don't want to turn off the toggle. We just want to close it. There we are. So essentially what happens here is we turn the gate off once we do this once, which means that we don't have to worry about it being called again. We actually would want to come all the way back here now that I'm thinking about it, because we want to get rid of the prompt button as well. So essentially we are just creating this, this system where whether they walk away or whether they click the button, we close the gate and we get rid of the prompt. This sort of thing might seem a little bit strange if you're just following along at home, like, oh wait, what did he just do? It's not really that complicated once you start to think about it yourself, though. And that's the problem with tutorials, right? If you're just following along in a tutorial, you might not realize exactly what the logic is. Do you know why I set that up that way? It's pretty obvious if you have to do it yourself and you realize, oh, I need to be able to get rid of that A prompt so that it's not cluttering up the screen and so the player can't click repeatedly and that sort of stuff. But if we just tell you that that's what we're doing, then it sort of falls flat and you don't really catch it. And that's one of those reasons why I think it's more important to learn how things work rather than following a specific tutorial. There are a million things that we can do with this level blueprint. We could move buildings around. We could open and close doors. We could have NPCs react to the player or whatever needs to be done. We could have birds fly away. We could have an explosion sound effect. Whatever we need to do, we can put it right here in the level blueprint. We don't have to create an object that has the specific stuff in it that needs to happen in this level, because the level knows what's supposed to happen in the level. You just need objects that can do that kind of thing, and then you set them up to take whatever arguments they need, like text. Now, there are a lot of other things that you're probably going to want to do. For example, our text box just pops up with all of the text fully laid out in it, and you might want to do something like you know, a spool where it goes with sound effects and letter by letter bouncing in, you know, income. Or you might want to do it so that she turns her head or does an animation besides her idle stand. Or you might want to make it so that when that text box pops up, her portrait is there. All of these things are steps past what we're doing now. They're built on top of what we're doing now. In many cases, you can find a free or very cheap library that does those things for you. For example, the text pop-up, letter by letter pop-up, that's actually not very easy in Unreal with just the stock text. So you might go into the Unreal Asset Store and get yourself, I don't know, an asset that does that for you. You can do it yourself, but there's word wrap considerations, and it's just a little bit annoying. So, you know, unless you like programming, I would recommend that you find something that does that for you. But for something like, you know, her reacting, all we would really need to do is grab her. What is her? She's a character builder test, right? So maybe we could put that character builder test right here. Oh, look at that. There it is. Once you've selected it, it pops up in the level blueprint. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to make it do something with an AI? We could have it do make noise. What sort of noise do we want it to make? We don't actually have this set up, so I'm not going to try and show it to you just at the moment, but it would be very easy to just slot that in right there. And obviously it would be best if we moved it a little bit so it's a little clearer. Oh man, my clicking is just the worst. Move! There we are. But you can see how easy it is to just make more stuff happen. We can just add more things that we need over time. Once you understand the foundations, where you put this kind of stuff, you realize how you can build it out. I hope this was clear. If not, let me know. If it was, let me know. Have a good day.